I'm so excited for this month. I love holiday flowers, and so I'm excited to show you how I paint poinsettias and other holiday flowers. I'm just wetting my palette and I'm just using whatever is on here. I think this is a mixture of alizarin crimson and perylene maroon and a little bit of deep scarlet. I'm just adding some water to it. So with poinsettias, when you start out, you want to leave kind of a little bit of a stem right in the center, and then you're just painting these single blade leaf shapes. And then as you work your way around, kind of vary the size a little bit. So you don't want all of them to be exactly the same size or even the same shape. You want them to vary just a little bit. I'm even going to vary the color just a little bit. But I'm kind of alternating between the larger and the smaller size. And I'm going to let this dry for just a second. I want to continue to vary the color a little bit, so I'm just going to add a little bit of pink in here. And then I'm going to come in between what I've already painted and then do that same thing again. Just going to vary, but this time I'm going to keep them on the larger side. If you run into any parts like this where you're going to run into a petal you've already painted, you can just end the petal kind of like this, and then pull that stem inward. So right here, I don't have enough room for a really big petal, so I'm going to do a smaller one here, and then I'm going to come back to this in a second and kind of reevaluate if I need another one. Okay, so now I've painted around twice, and this is where I can kind of choose and decide if I need to add more or if I want to stop here and add my greenery or any other things that I want to put with this. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lighten the color a little bit by adding some more water. And I'm going to add just a couple more little petals here. And I think I'm going to call that done. Now once this dries, you could always go in and add those veins to the center of these petals, just to give it more of that poinsettia look. Right now I'm just going to get a little bit of this gold gouache, a little bit of that, I'm really working the water in because I want it to be a little bit darker. Actually, I might just have it right here. I'm just gonna squirt a tiny bit right onto my palette, and I don't recommend using watercolor paint wet, but sometimes, especially with this gold gouache, I like using it fresh out of the tube because it's just more pigmented. It's really beautiful. I'm just gonna add some dots here in the center. Now, if I wanted to go in and add those veins, what I would do, you can choose the same color or a slightly darker color. I'm going to use a slightly darker color. And you can just go in and add veins like you would for a leaf. I think it looks really nice when some are a little bit lighter than others. Just adds a little bit of interest when they're not all the same. I think those little details sometimes just bring the whole painting to life. And it just depends. I mean, this is a personal style choice. I like adding details, but maybe you like to leave yours a little bit loose. Try it out and see what you prefer. Now this one's still a little bit wet. I'm just gonna leave it because the lines just blended right into the rest of the petal. So I could come back to that later and just finish that off. Okay, next I'm going to show you how I paint some little berries. I'm gonna use a slightly oranger color for this, just so we're not using the same red for everything. We're just gonna mix it up a little bit. I'm just going to paint a series of dots. I like to stick with an odd number. For the most part anyway. Sometimes, depending on the space that I'm working with, that changes, but for the most part, I like to stick with an odd number. I feel like that just helps balance it all out really nice. And then I'm going to, with my size 0 round brush, I'm going to come in here and paint some stems. Now, just because I'm working on video, I don't want to wait for this to dry all the way. So I'm being careful not to touch the berries with my paintbrush. Something like that. And you can always add some of these little twig lines to connect your leaves to, if you want to. Sometimes I like to do that. And then with my paintbrush, I'm just going to add in some leaves. To get this really muted green, I just added in the color that was already on my paintbrush. So this kind of orangish red color right into my green. And then just a tiny little detail on the top here. I'm going to show you really quick how to do a sprig. This one's pretty straightforward, but it's always a nice texture to add in with your holiday florals. You just paint your stem, and then you want to add in these little sprig stems. And what you want to do is think about these as little V's almost. That's the kind of angle you're going for. They're not going to be perfect V's along that stem. Let me show you. So you don't want them necessarily to be perfect V's on either side. You want them to kind of alternate and have maybe some spaced out on one side and some closer together on the other side. That'll just help it feel a little bit more organic. But that's pretty much it for the sprig. It's kind of fun to vary the color too as you go. Start with one color, and then when you pick up more paint, just change the color. It's kind of fun. Add some detail and interest to what would be a really simple flower. Okay, now this next one, using sap green and lots of water. But this is that holly leaf. Now, you want to do the same kind of thing as with the sprigs, but you're going to space these out a little bit more. These are going to be where your points in the holly leaf are. Now, you can outline like this. The key is you've got to go quickly, because if you outline and you wait to fill it in, you'll see those outlines. Now, if you're using a nice paper like this cold press, this is a Blick Premier. If you're using a nicer paper like this that's at least 140 pounds cold press, you can get away with not painting right away because it doesn't dry too quickly. But that's one way to outline and then hurry and fill it in. Another way is to build it out. So make these a little bit thicker, and you can kind of build it out as you go. It just depends on what you are more comfortable with. So in one, we kind of drew the outline first and filled it in. The next one, we kind of used strokes to build in the center. Do that one more time. So when you work quickly like this, it just kind of all blends together. It looks really nice. Now this way is going to look a little bit more organic if you want to be a little more loose with it. I kind of like having the crisp edges. So it's totally a personal preference what you choose to do. Now, once this dries, you can go back in and add your detail. Now let me show you really fast how you would add leaves next to your berries. I'm just going to draw 3 in here. We'll do a couple more. We've got a little group of 5 over here. You want to start your stem and make sure you pay attention to where that stem is pointing so that you know which way these are going to face. Now this one I didn't have a ton of space for, but you get the idea. I'm just going to choose kind of 2 berries to start my stem right in between and then add that in. Now another fun little thing you can do is change the color a little bit and then add that sprig right in here next to it.